The commercial for the Global Repatriation Council at the beginning of episode 3 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier sure puts a warm and fuzzy spin on the reintegration of half the population that returned from the blip. But we find out that tons of people live in their resettlement camps that seem to be chronically low on basics like food and water. These conditions seem to be what has, at least in part, radicalized art teacher wannabe turned super terrorist Karli Morgenthau, given what she says to her flag smasher buddy about using all their super strength to get supplies to the kids in those camps. Beyond that, they're expecting a job offer from Power Broker, which can't be good for anyone. And from the way they ended the episode, it looks like they've crossed the line into full-blown mass murder mode. So what do you make of all this, Bob? Karli and her super smashers clearly need to be stopped, but is the GRC dropping the ball here too? What are your impressions of Karli and her gang after this?
I think the GRC is definitely dropping the ball here. They go to the old woman who's maybe Karli's mother or someone she looked up to, who's dying of, what did they say, tuberculosis? And the one doctor's like, yeah, in those kind of crowded camps, that sort of happens all the time. And Karli mentions, when people came back, we were somewhere, and then the people who came back, they booted us out and took their place back. So, we went from over the last 5 years having somewhere to now these people have come back and uprooted our lives. Now, that may be fair for the person who came back, but for the person being displaced,
it's also
that's got to be the kind of thing that sort of radicalizes you.
Well, yeah, and then you're forced to live in these camps and you don't have
Right.
enough food and water and all this. And so I actually get the impression that, these GRC camps are a little bit more complex than I originally envisioned, because you have to imagine that some people who come back would have still the resources or the connections or whatever to like get their old, old situation back, their old house, whatever.
Right.
Whereas other people, don't. And so you have a mix of blipped people and non-blipped people that just got pushed out of where they were when other people came back. So it's really interesting, complicated, sort of nasty situation. And just one clarification, I think that when she talked about her mom dying of tuberculosis or whoever that was something that happened previously, and the person who was dying during this episode that she went to go visit and all that was the person who got shot in the previous episode on when Walker shot her in their fight on top of the semi-trucks. Because she got shot in the gut. And, as we saw from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Steve being a super soldier does not make him immune to bullet wounds. I mean, he's not Thor,
Yeah, bullet wounds still hurt.
So I think that's what happened. So by my count, I think they've lost 2 of the super flag smashers. Because there was the guy that decided to stay behind and delay the police or whatever in the previous episode. And then there's the one that got shot and died. And there are supposedly 20 doses, Dr. Nagel said, right? Total.
There's 20 doses, but did they use them all? Because originally they only counted 8 super soldiers.
Oh, good point.
So, I mean, that's kind of the leverage they have. They have, what would it be, 12 doses of the super soldier serum left? That's what
About
they're
a dozen.
expecting to have leverage with the power broker.
Yeah.
But the power broker does not seem to me, from the reputation they're giving him, that he's going to be the fuzzy kumbaya, let's work it out kind of guy.
I don't think
he's going to want to kill them
all.
all. Oh, you crossed me, I'm going to kill all of you and take my stuff back. So I don't think they have the leverage they think they have.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they have it at all. Well, I mean, they have some, but the power broker being, a crime like Uberlord is not going to be cool with that. And, those type of folks don't tend to want to make compromises with people that F them over, right?
Yeah.
So she's saying the power broker is going to come to them, not necessarily on their knees, but come to them, wanting to bargain maybe. Whereas I think, and who was it that said, that they feel sorry for Karli because of what she did to the power broker? Was that I can't remember who that was actually. Was it one of the people that they made contact with in the fancy criminal bar? But yeah, I tend to think that Karli and them are in trouble. But it's also a little more interesting conflict than just having like one super evil villain, laughing maniacally because they want to rule the world versus, the knights on shining armor. It's like a much more interesting situation
Yeah.
than that with, even the villains, maybe having it out for each other. So that's really interesting.
And even multiple levels within the Flag Smashers, because Karli, seemingly on her own initiative, blows up that building with people in it. And even her teammates like,
Did we
dude,
want to go there?
are
Yeah.
you sure that's a good idea?
But
Because
it's done
it's one
now.
thing to steal supplies that are desperately needed. I mean, you can get some sort of worldwide sympathy for that.
Hmm.
But when you steal the supplies and then blow up a building full of people you've already subdued
Yeah.
just
Helpless
to
people.
make a point, uh, you're
Yeah,
going to have less support after that.
I think Carly's, flag smashers or super smashers are they're an example of a villain where you can empathize with their plight, the ways in which they've either, been wronged or made a victim or the dire straits that they've have found themselves in, but the way they go about resolving that is not good. That
Yeah.
is, again, that is what makes them the villain. And now they've crossed this line and they're just straight up murdering people. She does have that line where it's like, don't you understand, we're fighting for our survival? And like, okay, you can understand that, but at the same time, like, you really didn't have to blow them up. Now, she says to her friend, this is the only language they understand. That I think is her falling into the more simplistic way of thinking. Like, you can get where somebody is, you could get where she's coming from, I think, but at the same time, A, that's really bad and morally reprehensible what she's done. And B, to say that's the only language they understand, in a way, maybe that's true, but that doesn't mean that, like, it's going to have the effect that you want it to have. The fact that you, like, killed, like, all these guards or whatever. So I think she's just created more problems for herself, and obviously she should not have killed those people, right?
Yeah, there's
So,
definitely some more problems than she anticipates are coming down the road for her at this point.
yeah. But I think it does make more sense that they did not use all of the super soldier serum that they got. Because A, that does give them more leverage with the power broker, and B, it also holds out various possibilities for not only the future of the show, but the future of the MCU, right? Because you can imagine them being like a very limited quantity forever, essentially. Like, somebody's going to be interested in those, right? So, so who knows what's going to happen? I think that whatever happens the rest of this show, I would not be surprised if at least one or two of those vials survives the end of this show and is just like out there in the MCU to cause problems. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's how I feel about that. All right, do you have any more comments about Flag Smashers, Bob, or are you ready to move on?
Let's move on.